So, I'm switching things up a little bit with this podcast. I originally started it to create more long form content and to find a way to express my true self. For anybody that knows me, I'm just quite deep and I really like long conversations. And I was finding that creating short form content just wasn't really lighting up my fire, so to say. And so I have some really, really exciting things for this coming up for this podcast in 2023. I've got some amazing, incredible guests lined up. And it's just going to blow you away, the conversations we're having. And I realized what I'm really craving is to create more community and more deep conversations. So that's what this is about. If you're here, you really, really believe that a life lived beyond fear and in alignment with your true self is the key to freedom and fulfillment. So it's for the rebels, it's for the creatives, it's for the ambitious, it's for the misunderstood, and it's for those who really know that being brave and just being yourself is a lot easier said than done. So my goal with this podcast is to introduce you to the people and the practical tools that will help you actually be brave, align with your true self, and create the freedom and fulfillment that you desire in all areas of your life. And remember, no matter what challenges you're facing, no matter how lost, stuck, behind, or frustrated you might feel in your life, there's always a bigger plan. God's plan. And if you trust that and commit to riding the waves of life with grace and courage, you're closer than you think. Today's guest is a personal branding specialist, ex-software company owner, sales genius, and seven-figure entrepreneur. She's also a compassionate human being who thrives on human transformation and witnessing people fulfill their dreams. When Mary first reached out to me, I immediately got sage archetype vibes from her, probably the rarest of the divine feminine archetypes. After years of success in the corporate world and trying really hard to keep up with the Joneses, she had a major breakthrough. She realized that even with all the success and labels, she wasn't living in alignment with her true self, and she still didn't feel like she was enough. Not only that, she felt trapped by the pressure of conformity. After a 12-month sabbatical, lots of inner work, and her children being her biggest inspiration to make some changes, she experienced a 360 paradigm shift in her life and found a way to integrate her years of corporate experience with her innate genius and turned it into a successful company. Today, she's the CEO of Mary Henderson Coaching and the founder of Lights, Camera, Action, a successful online coaching program that has given her the freedom and inner harmony she always wanted and the flow and prosperity of doing what comes easily to her. And she's on a mission to show others how they can do the same. So Mary, take us back to little Mary, where you were born, raised, and kind of how you got on the path that you're on today.
Oh my God, that's a long story, Tanya. Okay, so where do I start? I need to think about the origin in my whole story of where I want to start from. But I think I want to make it relatable to so many people. And that is that, I was raised in a very typical European household where everything was all about suffocation and control, my parents were just so controlling, but not controlling from the standpoint of overprotective, and I think that when you migrate to another country and you're children of war, when you have your own children, it's this whole, cocoon protection type of an environment. And because of that, I was very sheltered and I had a very limited life, if that makes sense. My mum and dad didn't sort of allow us to explore our inner desires, our inner dreams. They didn't allow us to expand outside of the status quo, if you will. So there was very much a checklist life. And I really rebelled against that. I was very rebellious. And I think I was rebellious. Well, I know why I was rebellious is because they were creating this false self that I was very uncomfortable with. I was really uncomfortable with being the person that they were designing me to be, and really, really wanted to be my true self, which was a very creative person. My mum and dad, I don't know how, but they allowed me to have singing lessons from the age of 5, and they recognized that there was a talent there. And I loved that. That was just my that was my escapism, if you will. And my voice is professionally trained right up until, my late teens. And of course, my mum being, from a Yugoslavic background, there was no way she was going to allow her daughter to become a professional singer. Like, that was just not going to happen, and so I went through school, I went through, secondary, I even went to university, and I didn't finish my degree at university. I just couldn't stand it. I was just like, what? And I was very lost, because I thought I always wanted to go to the College of Arts. In my mind, from the age of 5, that was my dream. And of course, that was crushed when I was about 16. And, and then I was really lost right up until my 30s, thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I don't actually know what to do. But I think because of that rebellion and that uncertainty, it actually led me on a path of self-discovery, of asking those really big questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? What is my purpose? What am I meant to be doing for the rest of my life? And so I went on this path of I started my career in the media industry, which I couldn't stand. It was so against my value system and also who I was. I didn't like that. In the late 90s, year 2000, I realized that I really wanted to get into the IT industry because it was dynamic and it was fun and it was young and it was all happening. And eventually landed an amazing job in the IT industry. I expedited my career in the IT industry very, very, very quickly. And when you look back now and you connect the dots, you think, it couldn't have been any other way. It had to be like this in order for me to get to where I am today.
Yes, I'm smiling through that whole thing because if some of you know my story a little bit, but it's like, it's almost identical to yours, like identical. And it just blows me away because it makes me realize how many people probably out there will relate. Since our stories are so identical, that means there has to be more. Even the same path, like I wanted to go into the arts after school. Obviously, that was just like, how are you ever going to survive it being a creative? Like, are you crazy? So that was squashed totally. And we both I ended up in marketing. I ended up actually in an online dating company, which was like, one of the most, like IT based companies in Australia. So, and forward thinking companies in Australia. So that's so interesting. And for those of you who are listening, like, this is the first time Mary and I are actually, talking. So I'm learning about her just as much as you guys are. So that's really, really amazing. And it just shows, how much our like parenting and culture, not just in family culture, but like societal as well, impacts the trajectory of our lives.
Yes.
And just how we're both now in a similar field of work as well. So that's amazing. So I want to hear how you kind of went, because you're a really successful entrepreneur. Like, you've had a couple of successful startups. You were the owner of a software company.
Yes.
You are a really expert saleswoman. And now you're a personal branding strategist and specialist, and you have your own successful coaching company. So I'd just love to hear kind of about the rise in that and how you kind of, the rise and fall, I guess, as we would say, because you had like this big breakthrough and epiphany. And I'd just love to hear that story.
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I reflect back on my entire professional career and even my personal career, we always dismiss the things that we can do with ease and grace, whether it be sales, whether it be finance, whether it be, being a legal practitioner, doctor, whatever you are, anything that comes with ease and grace, we just dismiss that as like, oh, everyone can do that. But, personal branding for me, actually, I came face to face with it in year 2000. That's when I started. That's when I actually experienced the power of personal branding, which is exactly what I did in my career in the IT industry. I had an amazing opportunity. There was a sliding door moment. I recognized, oh my God, like I can actually position myself as a brand in the IT industry so that I can be known as a complex problem solver. It's exactly what I did intentionally. And so then I was headhunted by a multinational a tech company based out in California, and I was their this VP of sales for Asia Pacific. And what happened is that I had a massive sales team Could you imagine sitting down with you're the new VP of sales, you're sitting with all of your new sales team, all the people that are reporting into you in this meeting room, and then your VP of sales says, I want you to ditch your job descriptions in the rubbish bin in the center of this room, because you guys will no longer have job descriptions. What you actually are going to have is brands. And that's exactly when that all started for me. I realized the power of personal branding. But here's the thing, Tanya. For me, personal branding was never about being famous, which I think a lot of people sell this notion that, hey, if you build your brand, which you can't build your brand, then, you're going to become famous and well-known, etc. I just want to push that aside. My version of personal branding is all about bringing to the forefront your true self. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And that's how you need to show up every single day. So, of course, in my sales role, merged with personal branding, this is the trajectory now that I'm on. And then in 2005, I started my software company. I left my corporate career. I actually started first a peripheral company. So we made IT accessories, predominantly laptop bags, cables, things of that nature. And I sold that into Australia's largest retailer. And it actually became their home brand. It was the #1 selling laptop bags. It was just so amazing.
Cool.
And, circumstances happened and we sort of had to fold that business, which was fine. And then I moved immediately into starting up my software company, which was also very successful. And that was a multi-7-figure business, infrastructure. I had the most amazing office in the Arts District in Melbourne. I mean, it didn't get any more better than that. And 7 years into that organization, we built very bespoke software. So I had a cognitive scientist that worked in my company. We really understood the behavior of how people consume content, how they experience software applications, things of that nature. I learned a lot in that in my own company through the people that I employed, because they were super, super smart. Yeah. And I learned, how to organize information, Tanya. That was the thing that I could do with ease and grace. So I could work with my team and we could create these amazing solutions, because somehow I could get into the head of the user and understand how they wanted to experience the software application. So as a collective, we were very powerful, and we only serviced the academic sector. That was our sector. We didn't focus on anybody else. Yeah. And so that was my second startup. But in September the 8th, 2011, my second son was born. Literally 3 hours after he was born,
So you did all that with a child as well?
I had a child before.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
I think that's important to say, because, like, a lot of people have this idea that, when you have kids, it's kind of all, not all over in a way, but it's like, it's hard for a woman to juggle all of that.
I think it's hard for women to juggle, because it was for me, because I wasn't in my purpose, if that makes sense. I was actually walking an uphill battle. So when women are in a corporate career or actually running their own business, and it's not the love of their life, it's going to be hard. It is an uphill battle. Because
do you think it's the notion of, like, you were doing it more so unconsciously?
I built that business because I was looking for validation from my parents. I was still that little girl who was looking for my parents to say, oh, we're so proud of you, even though you didn't finish your degree, right? Okay. So deep down, that was the truth, right?
That was the driver. That was the motivator. Yeah.
That was the motivator.
It's not like intrinsic, right? It's like it's coming actually from an external source. It's not actually intrinsic to who you are. So
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So when my son was born and I reached out to get my lip balm, my business card falls on the bed, and I pick up this business card and I'm like, oh my God, my whole life has been a series of labels. Like, I actually freaked out. But I also had
titles and labels.
Titles and labels. And not only did I freak out, but I came to that recognition, that epiphany, where it was like, I got to get out of here. Like, this is not my vocation. I cannot let this business card drive who I am and how I show up in the world. Wow. What was interesting, Tanya, is that I knew in that moment I would resign from my own company, my own company. And 2 weeks later, I did exactly that. I sat with my accountants. We're sitting on this boardroom table. There's 7 of us. And they're like, oh my God, isn't it amazing? You're doing well, da, da, da. And I was like out of my body and just looking at everybody. And I just said, I'm sorry, I'm actually resigning from my own company. My accountant says, you're just hormonal. Like, come, you'll be fine. And I said, oh, no. This is not hormonal. This is my soul talking. Like, sorry, no hormones here. And I resigned from my company. We merged my company with another company. And January 2012, I took a 12-month sabbatical. I engaged 2 mentors, both of which that completely changed my trajectory. One was a professor in philosophy from Oxford University, and the other one was a professional in the emotional body. And so I felt like somebody unzipped me and just.
Can I ask, how did you come to the kind of conclusion that you needed a mentor in those areas? Or did you surrender and they kind of came into your life through the universe? Or did you actively go out looking for that? I think it's important because for me, actually, a lot of my mentors have come from a place of surrender and me not actually knowing what I needed until it came into my life, versus me actively going out and being like, this is exactly who I need, what I need, when I need it.
That's a great question, because about 6 months prior to me actually giving birth, I met this meditation teacher, and she was like, she had this specific modality that I was interested in, but she lived like 6 hours out of Melbourne, where I live. And she rang me and she said, hey, I'm going to be in Melbourne because her son played basketball or whatever. And she said, I'm going to be in Melbourne. And did you want to catch up? And I said, look, that's a great idea. So I said, we'll just meet in my office. It was a Saturday afternoon. So she came into my office, and could you imagine, I want you to think about this, and you can see the way that I look. She rolls up. She was a full on, like, I don't even know how to explain. She had black fingernails, like she had a farm, right? She just looked, just
like hippie, like so opposite of the city life, so like opposite of what you were used to. Yeah.
So opposite, and so I just sort of looked at this woman. I'm like, okay, right. So she comes into my office and she was very, very Aussie, like, yeah, like, like, how are you, matey? And I was like, okay. Anyway, so we sat down and I just sat there. I didn't say much, but what she did is she handed me a book and she said, I want you to read this book. Just read this book. It's all you need. And I was like, okay. And the book was Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert. And she handed me the book. She left. That was the end of that. I got the book and I actually put it on the pile of my paperwork in my office. I just left it there. And then she left and I was like, oh, what good was that? So anyway, I give birth to my son and all that happened. I go home and the book was the first thing I read. I don't know why.
Wow.
Like you said,
at you, jumping out at you.
Just jumped out at me. Yeah. And I read that book, Tanya, and I was like, oh my God, I know why she gave me that book. And that was the trigger. That was actually the trigger, because I suddenly realized in that book, I need to understand that my emotions are caught up at such a nano level. I need to understand what is driving this behavior and this need for validation. Like, why am I after this validation from external sources when I should be finding myself? And then on the first day of my sabbatical, which was January 1st, 2012, I walked to my computer and I Googled, how do I change my life? And then I started watching all these TED Talks, and my mentor who mentored me, the professor in philosophy, was giving a TED Talk. And then I was like, that's it. That's the guy. That's the one for me. Because I didn't want self-help. You see that? I already knew that. Because after I read Dr. Candace's book, I was like, I'm beyond self-help. I need hardcore, like, fact, fiction. It's not that I needed to be fixed, because I hate that language.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had to go in to understand at such a deep, deep level that I had to make changes. And it was
amazing. Like, you weren't looking for motivation and you weren't really stuck. It's like you just needed to go deep and you needed someone to guide you and through that. Yeah. Amazing. Like, you just knew intuitively already. That's intuitively. Amazing. But all the people, the universe gave you the people that you needed.
if they
Wow. So
absolutely did.
cool.
You're so right. And that was amazing, because through that journey, what it allowed me to do for the first time in my life, my adult life, I didn't work for 12 months. Could you imagine? Like, I just didn't even know. I've never not
You
worked
didn't
as an
even know what to do with yourself. You're just like,
adult. Well, the thing is that I had to go in, and
yeah.
that was, it was like my full-time job,
Mm.
because it was very difficult, Tanya. Like, it was very
Yes.
confronting. It was emotional. It
It
was
was like a spiritual awakening.
massive,
Mm.
massive.
Mm.
Yeah.
So interesting, because just another layer of your story that's pretty much identical to mine. Obviously, just on different timelines. Mine actually only happened a couple of years ago. But wow, that's really amazing. Because so a question I have is, were you and I think this is important, especially for a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs, because I know a lot of people who follow me are also spiritually inclined, even if they're not fully open about it, or they're just interested in the kind of mystical manifestation world. It was something really, really hard for me to own, the fact that I was actually spiritual in nature, and I didn't even know this about myself until my late 20s. But I found myself kind of being a closet spiritual person. Did you find that you were kind of dabbling in that for a little while until you kind of met the mentors and all of that? So you had like an understanding, or was it all just like really new to you? Like,
I've always been that person, always from young, where I would just feel, I would see, I would just,
okay,
I had a
yeah, yeah,
completely different, I spent more time in my imagination than reality, if that makes sense, because I was
yes,
very in tune with that world.
amazing.
And so I kind of knew, for me, self-help is a dead end. Like, I don't believe in self-help. I think it keeps you in a loop, and you keep coming
Yes,
back for more, and you never, ever, ever
yeah,
resolve issues. And so when we say spiritual, even that's a dead end, because if you actually break the word down, it's spirit, you all. Okay. So we're all spirits, right?
yeah,
We're all physical beings, we're all spiritual beings, and we all have a soul, right?
yes,
So the question is, and I studied quantum medicine as well, in that year, 12 months. So when you look at quantum medicine, it's very interesting, because it says to you, it's the philosophy is, where does the symptom and the ailment actually live? Is it in the physical body? Is it in the emotional body? Or is it in the subjective body? It's a very interesting concept, right?
Mhm.
Because when you go to the doctor and your allopathic doctor says, oh, here's a tablet to fix the problem, they're not actually fixing the symptom, they're just band-aiding it. Whereas
Yes.
a quantum doctor would say, well, let's discover
Look
where
at
actually,
holistically.
yes, where
Yeah,
does it live? Where
yeah,
does it live?
yeah.
Right. So when I look at my spirituality, and when I was exploring that in that 12-month period, thankfully my mentors, who had just worked way ahead of the game, they were, and also the other thing is that it's not just way ahead of the game. My mentor, the professor in philosophy, let's think about the knowledge base that he had. It's none of it was self-help. I
Mm.
mean, think about a guy who has access to the Vatican vaults. Could you imagine what's in there? Like, I mean, and I was privy to be mentored by someone who led me on the right path to
Yes,
self-realization.
yeah,
That's the key here.
yeah.
So it's not about going and finding something outside of us, and even with understanding what the meaning of purpose is, that 12-month process through that mentorship made me recognize, oh my God, like, my purpose lives within my experience, my knowledge, my wisdom, my skill set, my passions, my gifts, my talents. In
Yeah,
there is my purpose. It's not out there.
yeah.
And so when we understand that, it's like a lotus that opens up and you're the center of it. You're like, holy shit, why have I been looking out there all this time?
Yes. Yes. I think that is one of my biggest pet peeves. And something that I fell into, a trap I probably fell into in my mid-20s, was this idea of like, what is my purpose? And I think there is this path on this, so-called spiritual path, where you are a seeker and you're like, what is my purpose? Until you really realize is not out there. Like, it's about you, and it's about merging both the physical and the spiritual together. Because when you get into that seeking mode, you actually stop really being in the present, and you stop living your life and giving your all to every single moment. And so then you end up stuck and end up in this thing. So yeah, it's really really glad that you brought that up. So so you realized you were out of alignment. I mean, you have such a powerful, strong character. And like, I know there are some people who are, and like I said at the start, like you have this very like sage, divine feminine archetype, which is actually quite rare. And the thing I relate to you about, like, you've always been very intuitive, empathic, and lived in an imaginary world. Like, so did I, absolutely. I think the Catholic, like my parents raised me Catholic, and a lot of that, and there was a lot of physical and emotional abuse in my house. So I think a lot of that ended up, I mean, it was always there, but when it came for me to come out of the closet in so and so my like spiritual journey, I felt kind of almost like a fraud, like an imposter, because I was like, well, how can I be, this Catholic girl that, and at the time I didn't even know I had a lot of shame and guilt to work through, because I was also quite successful in my career. And then step into this kind of true self, this self that, I've discovered along my journey. And so I think sometimes we get lost in that seeking phase and the trying to figure out what our purpose is and what is outside of us. But it sounds like you never, like, you don't even have an inch of like self-doubt in you. Like,
Right.
And would you attribute that to, and that's amazing, would you attribute that to your parenting, like, or just your experiences, or has it been kind of something you've grown over time? Like, because, and I love how you said I was really lost for a lot of the time, because it's interesting, because like, yeah, it's like sometimes when we consciously become aware of the fact, like, I don't even know who I am and I'm lost, we mistake that for self-doubt when it's actually not. It's like you can still be really, really sure of yourself and feel confident about who you are and kind of the direction. It's just like you just need that kind of someone to guide you in the right place, and then you'll be like on your way.
Absolutely. So I want to share something also that a lot of people might relate to. My mother was a serial narcissist, like serial. Okay. And so I was raised with a mother who was basically a doorstopper in my life. So everything I wanted, doorstop. Everything I had, my dreams, doorstop. So she made sure that my sister and I would never be better than her. There was this thing about her that she just couldn't cope with us wanting more, being more, having more, etc. So I was raised in that type of toxic environment. Could you imagine? So I didn't know for years that my desire to be me, to have success, whatever that means for everyone, I was so afraid of it, Tanya, because if I had it, she would punish me. Do you see the pattern?
Yes.
And therefore it brings shame. Okay. So it's like, I can't be more successful than her. I can't have a better relationship with her. I can't be a better parent than her because I will be punished. Okay. So that I want to set that foundation, because a lot of people are going to relate to this. So the next stage is, okay, so I didn't self-realize that until later on in my life, because you don't realize that a narcissistic mother actually can impact you, or a father for that matter, can actually impact you to that degree, to a nano degree. And so when I started actually self-discovering myself, there were two key things that I want to say here, and these are very important words. I had the will and I had the desire to change my life at a core soul level. Okay. Very different to spiritual or physical. When you actually start working at the soul level, it's a whole new trajectory. And so I had the will and the desire. And that was people say, you're so tenacious. I'm tenacious because I had the will and the desire to get to my true self. And my mentor, the one that was a professor in philosophy, he was the one that opened that for me. He made me self-realize that, Mary, that the true self is already inside of you. We just have to unpeel those layers. It took me a very long time to start unpeeling those layers. But the will and the desire is very, very critical. Now, do I have days where I'm just, in chaos? Absolutely. And let me tell you, I embrace those. And also, I'm transparent, even with my clients. You know, when my clients show up, and I'll say, many times, I just need to take a step back for 3 months. I need to self-actualize some things that are in my way, you know, and I have to go into that place of just observing and I'm healing and being in myself, you know, and not chasing the dollar, because that can wait. That will come when I'm at that next stage of my, you know, when I unpeel that next layer, everything just manifests, right? So the will and the desire for me, Tanya, is my key to, and my driver to, you know, just continuing to self-actualize my potential, because we've got so much potential and we need to self-actualize it one by one, day by day. We just keep unpeeling it. And then the more we do that, the more we go in, the more we start to realize and experience who we truly are. Because underneath all of that, there's a pretty incredible human and a soul merged together that's just waiting to be embodied. And I think that we have to really understand that language and go beyond, you know, the language that you hear on social media that all these femme people, you know, use just as a way of opening a door or getting a client. I'm not interested in that until you've done the hardcore work and you understand that occult knowledge and you understand in between the lines. It's just self-help to me. You've got to go way beyond that to actually start to open up Pandora's box and go, whoa, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
I love how you say way beyond self-help, because I think a lot of people think that self-help is the way. Like, it's like that's the thing, like the next motivational video or the next mentor, especially if you see in the coaching industry, like the next thing that's going to help you. It's like, yeah, it's helpful to understand the real foundations and have a philosophy for your life in general. Thank you for sharing that, though, about your mom. And because I think, you know, a lot of the reason I called this the Closer Than You Think podcast is because there are, and, you know, myself included, I know it's a bit of an abstract term and title, but it's like not just on the idea of success, but also on the idea of personal development. Sometimes we can think our traumas and our you know, experiences in life that have hurt us or disappointed us or made us feel like we've taken a step back in life can be the reason why it's not supposed to be or not supposed to happen. And like, you know, I just want to say, like, you know, having a narcissistic mother is probably one of the worst things that you can go through in life. And so the fact that you are where you are today, the woman that you are today, is beyond inspirational. Like, to me, it's really incredible. And so so thank you for sharing that. So talk to me, because you mentioned the danger of denial. So I'd love to hear about how you kind of I know we talked about the subconscious and the conscious, but you said there was like, there's the danger in denial. So do you feel like there was a period in your life where you were just really in denial about maybe just your true self or your true trajectory and what you're doing today, when you were in your corporate job, when you were in the software company, where you had the realization, when you had my life is a bunch of labels and titles? Would you say that was denial? Like, or
to me, denial is even much deeper than that, because I think that we can say, oh, I'm denying my true self. Okay, well, what does the true self mean? Like, what does it actually mean? So we need to understand that first before we can actually understand denial. For me, denial is actually denying the truth of how I feel first and foremost. So we deny our emotions, which is the starting point. So how many times have you been in a situation, we all have, when people say, are you okay? You're, oh, everything's fine. It's not fine. That's not the truth. So we're in denial of the feeling and the emotion that is actually keeping us hostage, by the way. That's the key. So when we deny how we truly feel, we're also denying the soul, and the soul opening up like that lotus and actually expanding. So to deny how we feel is not getting us, no matter how many self-help books and no matter how many affirmations you read or say or write, if you're in denial of how you feel, nothing ain't gonna happen. It's the truth.
That's
And
awesome.
so, and what it does is that it actually releases you. So when you actually start to come face to face with the truth and you say, I'm angry with my mother because of the way she treated me, and that's the truth of how I feel right in this moment. That's the truth. That's the actual truth. I can't deny the truth. Yes. So
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm angry, and that's how I feel, right? And I'm allowed to be
Feel that way. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I'm releasing my soul. I'm actually releasing myself from the pain of bearing that emotion somewhere in my body that sooner or later is going to show up as some type of symptom or ailment.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I mean by denial.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it's really it's a juicy one. I mean, I could talk about it for ages because but we could go off on a tangent, and I know I really want to talk about personal branding and all of that, but denial is it's actually much harder to get to a place of truth than I think people realize. And unless you have the support around you, and unless you are, like you said, have the desire and the will to completely change your life at a soul level and be willing to let go of everything that you know, then it's going to be extremely hard. But then you're choosing an inauthentic life. So that's a question you have to sit with. Do you want an authentic life, no matter how hard it feels like right now, maybe going through these things? But at the end of the day, living an authentic life is
freedom.
key to freedom and fulfillment. Yeah.
It's freedom. It's absolute freedom. You can't explain it any other way. I couldn't arrive where I am right now had I dropped all of those labels.
And I feel that from you. I feel a sense of personal freedom from you.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
Yeah. I love it. So I'm so obsessed. I love personal branding, right? Because it's a thing that's changed my life as well. Like, I just love it. I want to grow my personal brand, but also use it to impact people. And I think our stories of being so lost in certain places of our life and coming to a place of true, authentic self, like, of course, we're going to want to help people build their personal brands because it's changed our lives and given us so much vitality and passion and purpose back. Like, and I love that. There's no better feeling than someone, saying, I feel more passionate, or I feel more alive because of you and your work. So, but I want to say, and I want to keep what I want to say. So, there's the coaching industry, right, which I think has been kind of moving away from what it was originally designed to do in lots of ways. You probably know a lot about that. But I love your brand because it really does focus on the personal branding. And I love how when I went onto your website and I saw the kind of frameworks that you use, like you have these really specific frameworks, and it's like, it's so detailed and it's just so easy to understand in a way. And so I want to ask you about your journey with the clients that you have and walking them through the personal branding concepts and frameworks that you have. Like, what are some of the challenges that come up? How, with in terms of not with your clients, but in your clients, like, do they struggle with emotions? Do they struggle with confidence? Or do they come to you already in that place and you kind of just help them build the business? Because you made a distinction between, all, like, the money will come when you do the inner work. And I agree with that. But I think some people, and this is my pet peeve with the coaching industry and just, spirituality and manifestation world in general, it's like, yes, it does, but you do have to have business knowledge, and a lot of people don't, especially women. I'm like, business is I had some kind of foundation being from the corporate world. I was around entrepreneurs, I was around people who knew about business for a long time, and I worked very closely with entrepreneurs. And systems and sales processes and marketing and all of this. But most people start actually even the coaching business or something not knowing. I know some of the best healers in in the world, and people that I've worked with that know nothing about business. And so they think they have a money problem. I'm like, but you don't. You have a business, marketing, sales problem. That's all you have. And so sometimes they self-diagnose and they think it's this and that. So anyway, so I was thinking, like, when people come to you, is it both? Like, do you teach that and the business side of things?
Yes. If you have a look at my methodology, you'll see that there's two parts to it. There's the masculine system and there's the feminine system. Okay. Now I want to talk about that because that's very important. You just made a very important point there. This is why this whole fem movement is extremely dangerous, because most of them invest in these fem coaches to make them feel like I'm going to self-actualize myself and I'm going to let my feminine out and suddenly I'm going to manifest everything that I want. Listen, if your emotional self is in disarray, you ain't going to manifest anything. Okay, so that's the first thing. Yes. Now, the second thing is that the masculine power system, which is all about implementation, is critical. How does a CEO run a Fortune 500 company? What do they sing? Do they sing Kumbaya together every single day and go, oh, we're just going to manifest, $1 billion contract? Like, really?
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. And like you, I come from a very strong corporate background. Remember, I've had a software company. I understand systems. Okay. Yeah. I really understand systems. So my approach is this, Tanya. This is critical. When I'm working with clients, they come to me and the first problem is, Mary, I've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom. I have no idea how to merge it together and create a solution. No one knows me. I'm completely invisible. In fact, I'm the world's best kept secret. I've invested in all these fem courses, but I'm still where I was. I don't know how to, I don't have a website.
So they come to you having invested in fem courses or like feminine. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And other coaching programs. And they still stay in their starting place, because I'll tell you why. They were either trying to motivate themselves and believe that the she-wolf will come out and all these miracles will happen. Or the other side is they're actually engaged a digital marketer who's teaching them how to write content and show up on social media, and nothing's happening. So I've got two ends of the coin. Let me just walk through the process of how if it's done in this way, you will get results. So the first thing is, we need to build a foundation. The foundation is, okay, what internal inventory do you hold that I can unpack and now use as my foundation? And what do I mean by internal inventory? I want to know about your professional experiences. I want to know about your knowledge. I want to know about your wisdom, your gifts, your talents, your passions, your values, everything that I can possibly get my hands on. I want to extract that out of you. We've built a software to now do this for us, because I only work with real fact. I'm not interested in what you want to be, who you aspire to be. Like, just give me the hardcore facts.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is because I want to work with the closest version of the true you. If I have that, I can help you, right? So we unpack all of that. I understand what their background is, their knowledge. What can you do with ease and grace, in other words? And once I have all of that inventory, then my genius is I can organize information very, very well. It's just what I was made to do. Yeah. And so I can create a solution for my clients that makes sense to their target audience. Okay, it's not what makes sense to them, so that they're asking for premium pricing. Some of my clients charge $5,000 for their solution, others charge $500,000. It just depends on who they're serving. Yeah. And so when we organize that information, now I can see, okay, this is the problem you can solve, and this is the audience that actually need that problem solved. Now I've got my foundation. Then we start working on the brand essence. We're defining the brand essence. We are not building your brand. We cannot build our own brands. The only people that can build my brand are my paying clients, my brand advocates, and the people that follow my work on social media.
I love that.
My brand. Yeah. I can't build it, but I can define it. So then we start defining the branding architecture from all the different attributes, so that we've actually got a foundation that we work from, and we never divert from that. We know what our lane is. We know who our target audience is. We also know where our target audience is on the buying cycle, because we have to communicate differently to them as well. And we also understand what our true core values are. And are we actually showing up with that value system every day? I can guarantee you 99% of people are not. Okay. Yeah. So then we build the foundation, and then we systemize their solution. Very important. So because when we can systemize their solution, it means that when you're building a system, something very important happens. It allows for input, it allows for output, but most importantly, you get a feedback loop. So if I have a feedback loop, I can continue to version my system and my program so that it's always scalable, it's always relevant, and it's always based on the receiving feedback from my paying clients and the outside world. Yeah. And so now that I've got my system. Then the third part is I now have to create digital assets that can create ecstatic brand experiences for the outside world. So people that come to my website, I want to give them an experience. They actually book a strategy call, it's an experience. They see my content, it's an experience. So all of my digital assets are very experiential. And then the fourth part is, this is in the masculine system, is now we're building layered lead generation strategies, layers in our lead generation strategy. It's not just showing up on Facebook, it's layering my lead generation strategy. But the key here is understanding where my target audience hang out so that I can be omnipresent in their eyes, not my eyes, in their eyes. I don't need to target 8 billion people in the world. I don't need that many clients. Yeah. You know, so when we've got all of that foundation in place, the business foundation, when my clients implement all of that, they are ready for commercialization. They have everything in place. Like the business is, they're running a business like a CEO in a Fortune 500 company. Tick. Then we need to become that. So now we go into the embodiment work. Now I teach hardcore, strategies on that I learned and I use and I've experienced. My whole program, my whole philosophy is about experience. If you can't teach through experiences, you're just a textpert. So I'm not interested in that sort of, in that idea. But then you've got to embody that. And when you embody that, you have to become it. You have to fully self-actualize who you are, show up, be there, do that. When you're on social media, it's not about just creating random content. It's being strategic and deliberate. You know exactly why you're doing it, who you want to start a conversation with. And you've got all these strategies in place that match your brand, that match the system or the solution that you have in place, that your digital assets are constantly reinforcing that experience. So it makes you believable and trustable. And your layered lead generation strategy is so on point that the messaging is right, and it's consistent and congruent with all of those other moving parts. When you embody all of that and you become that, believe you me, you don't need the law of attraction. Your business will work for you.
100%. Yes, I see that. The first thing I noticed about your Instagram was I'm like, I can tell she doesn't spend a lot of time on social media. Yes. And I love that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, because we can waste so much time on social media. Trying to build our businesses, thinking like the more we post, the more we hang out here, the more we whatever. It's like, and it's just not true. It's not true. And I think I felt that straight away. I was like, she doesn't spend a lot of time on social media. I can see it. And still there's a really strong presence, foundation, everything, So
it's absolutely right.
I love that. So I would actually, I really love the idea of talking about the balancing the masculine and the feminine, because I am actually a very feminine being. Like, obviously I'm a woman, but I'm also very just feminine in the way that I even run my business, even in the way that I just do everything really. And being from the corporate world, I noticed how much I was in this unconscious competition with them, trying to be as good as them in the same things that they're good at, like in the analytical things and in the mathematics and in all of these things. And it was all very unconscious, and I really didn't know my true gifts and the feminine power that I brought to the table. And so I suppressed it a lot. But I made up for it by just wearing high heels and dresses and stuff. It's just so incongruent. And so I had to go on this journey of really reclaiming my feminine in lots of ways. And so I totally did the pendulum swing. I went from like fully masculine, like just hustle, climb the corporate ladder, like just compete, and, you know, just prove myself basically. And then went all the way into like, I literally spent a month in Bali and was like, you know, just reclaiming my feminine. Really, I knew I was consciously doing that, but also, you know, there was no business foundation. There was no structure. I was just very much in the feminine flow, which doesn't work. You need both. You really do need both.
True.
And so yeah, I'm really understanding that now on a deeper level, and I'm really integrating both in my own life and in my business. And it really does feel so much better, because I do believe all of us have an inner king and an inner queen within us. And so when we don't fully own both of them, we will end up in this kind of pendulum swing or just denying a part of ourselves. So yeah, so I was going to say, okay, so people, and I can see how it's so easy for people to project onto you or onto any successful entrepreneur in general. They look at you like, oh, well, yes, she had some challenges, but and we, especially in the coaching industry, people can put people on pedestals, and it's just unconscious, and it's the golden shadow in us, right? Like and until you become aware of it, it's gonna hold you back for sure. But that is, so people see entrepreneurs as God, as if they're so much further away than, and this is also closer than you think, because I'm like, people seem so far away until you actually, and, you know, especially with social media and the influencer world and the coaching industry and all of these things and personal development in general. It's like people position themselves as superstars, and I'm all for it, right? I'm like, go big. Like, we should be actually building ourselves up more than we should be trying to humble ourselves in some ways. Like, I think that women can benefit a lot from actually building themselves up and not being so humble about everything, and not being so like, you know, it's like, yeah, just receive the compliment and be like, yeah, I'm amazing, and, you know, keep going. So, but I do want to say, because we do that, and because we see entrepreneurs as God, and we think that, yeah, I'll never get there. That just seems so far away. And like the idea of like $1 million goal in your business, or even a 6-figure business when you're first starting out, it just feels so far away. So I want to ask, like, and I want to humanize just the experience for people, and just say, like, you know, what are things, even as successful as you are, what are things that you still find challenging, or that you're still working on? Or do you truly feel like you've mastered the art of life and you're just riding the waves now? And it's like, yeah, it's not that you're never going to come up against challenges, but I know for me, coming up against challenges in, you know, say in my early mid-20s, I would just avoid confrontation at all costs. I would just avoid any challenges. I was all about confluence, you know, codependent in me, just wanted confluence in every single scenario. I still wasn't afraid to go after what I want. Obviously, I was successful in my corporate job, but in terms of just my life in general. And then when I started business, I was like, okay, the world starts to mirror back all of these things to you, the people you attract, the clients you attract, even just, you know, relationships, dating, like you start to get all these mirrors back to you, and you're like, okay, so some things, you know, if it's not feeling flowy and it's feeling like there's a lot of resistance, then something, you know, it's something you need to look at. And so I think there comes, when you build that confidence, and when you start to not value confluence and not value confluence over getting to the truth and getting to the core of the issue, and then moving past it, and then just getting on with your life, and things being good, and riding the waves of life like you're supposed to, and not suffering in that resistance. That's what I'm really interested in, especially as entrepreneurs, because I think it's already, you know, a tough gig being an entrepreneur, and have the grit of entrepreneurship that you need to just keep going. But then, are there still things that you find challenging that still trip you up? Or
I think that we need to actually just really look at that word entrepreneur, because to me, an entrepreneur is someone that's an innovator. Okay, so I don't see a coach as an entrepreneur. I see it as a business owner. I don't see a coach as an
true.
entrepreneur. Okay,
Yeah.
so when you're innovating product, like or building software companies or software products, yeah, sure, you can call yourself an entrepreneur, but other than that, you're just a business owner. And I think it's very important to make that distinction. The second thing I want to say is that I can't tell you, Tanya, how many of those influencers with 500,000-600,000 followers actually book strategy calls with me. And I can tell you categorically that 99% of them are living on the poverty line. Okay. And really what they want is fame. They do not want to serve. I can tell you that now. Okay. And they're the ones that I completely reject. I have in my entire coaching business had 2 people like that. And one of them, I asked her to leave my coaching because I did not want to work with people who wanted to be the next Kim Kardashian. I'm not interested in that.
I'm surprised they even come to you. I mean, I know they probably think, but that's interesting.
I can tell you now, I've had them all. And so what happens is that you look at these people and you think, oh my God, I just feel sad that they're so desperately wanting to be fame, and their whole life is vanity metrics. Their whole life evolves
around. Do you think do you find that they're mostly millennials? Like, do you think there's a generational thing here? Because I noticed that. Yeah.
100%. And it's very, very scary. And they're empty souls, like really empty souls. I mean, anyway, so there's that. The other thing is that I started my business in 2005. Okay, it's 2023. I'm still going hardcore today, just as much as I did 15 years ago. So this idea that it's a laptop lifestyle is complete and utter BS. That is not the truth.
I know. The first ever mentor that I invested in, their whole message was the laptop lifestyle. And while what they taught wasn't wrong, it's just the message. The message is so misleading. It's really, really misleading. And I'm just like,
true. And a lot of those guys, Tanya, that sell that idea, they're not around, a lot of them. They have an end of life in their business because they actually don't have the depth and the breadth. And realistically, here's what I want to share. What the true coaches and entrepreneurs, the true ones, the real ones, what your clients are buying is not my coaching program or my frameworks. I've got frameworks coming out of my ears. I've built systems. I know how to do that. They're buying my wisdom. That's all they want. That's all they care about. And the same thing with you and anyone else that's listening to this. People, if you've got the wisdom, that's the currency. The currency is not my coaching program. It's not my frameworks. It's not all of that stuff. They're just deliverables. Okay. But if I can provide my clients with outcomes that are results driven and transformation every step of the way, then you have got a brand advocate for life. And quite frankly, that's really what we should be working towards, is creating brand advocates. Every person that touches my brand, I want them to be my brand advocate. Now, it's not a coincidence why I do so many collaborations, Tanya. Why is it that people come to me and say, I want to collaborate with you? They say that because I'm not interested in selling fame and fortune. They want the wisdom. They want to be connected to that wisdom, because when I'm talking to you or I'm talking to someone that I'm collaborating with, I'm providing deep, deep, deep knowledge that I have experienced over many, many, many years. And I can actually give you an answer based on multiple experiences that have come, that have delivered a very specific outcome and a result, multiple results even in sometimes. And I just keep on, gets better and better. So that's what our clients are buying. They're buying the wisdom. So those guys that are selling the laptop lifestyle, what wisdom do they have outside of reading 3 books and rehashing somebody else's information? You can't.
Reading 3 books. I love that so much. No, and we are in a culture that fame and fortune scales, like it just does. And I love, because I just feel it and I love it. It's like there's fame and fortune, or there's freedom and fulfillment.
That's
and
correct.
Actually, they're not always linked. And I think it's so important to make the distinction between that. But there's so many traps, because when I first I quit my corporate job, my obsession was freedom. I was like, and I was reclaiming my feminine power, I felt so unfree within me that I thought I was going to find it externally in building a laptop lifestyle. But I knew I had so much skills and so much wisdom and all of this that I wanted to create, but I really still had so much more to ground in myself and really own about myself and my own gifts and my own wisdom and my own, everything. So yeah, there's always traps within those, but I think, yeah, the differentiation between fame and fortune and freedom and fulfillment is so important to, yeah, if you are a personal brand. But there's also nothing wrong with fame. If you want to be famous and there's something that you get from that and that's true to who you are, then there's nothing wrong with that either. It's I've noticed that I'm also realizing a lot about success, like this idea of success, because it's so different for everybody. It really is. Like some people really do like the idea of famous, like they're big personalities. They're just, maybe they're entertainers. Maybe they just love that kind of feeling, being in front of a crowd or whatever it is. And that's amazing. And then there's those who, just want to be behind the scenes and just want to do their soul's work, and it's really kind of intimate, or and they're introverts and they just don't want to. And so it's like there's nothing wrong with either. We just have to know what our drivers are and why we're doing it. Otherwise, it can trap you and it can trip you up. The other thing that I was going to say is, which brings me to a really interesting question, because what I have noticed, and this is something that I'm still working on, is this idea of trading your wisdom for money instead of your time for money. Because so much of these laptop lifestyle people, and just even I guess in entrepreneurship in general, you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? And it talks about trading not your time for money. And I think it's so the concept and the idea is like, yes, it makes total sense and it's correct. But getting to that point where we're so conditioned in a world to be trading all of our time, all of our life force energy, all of our souls for money. I see it all the time. Like, I mean, just you're trading your soul for money to survive. And I think we forget how lucky we are to live in this digital world, because you just go back one generation, they did not have the same opportunities that we have. They did not even have the same. Yeah. So for that, it's like we can really focus on gratitude. But yeah, I would love to hear how, and if you ever struggled with the trading your time for money, or if there was any money wounds there, because I had a lot of financial trauma that I had to work through. And and the idea, especially in corporate, it's like the longer hours you work, the more you give, the more you overdo everything, like the more you get a raise. And it's like getting out of that conditioning is it takes time. It's possible and you're closer than you think, but it does take time. And I'm just wondering what your idea is on that. And do you think that do you think that someone could say, someone's listening to this? I mean, most of my audience is around my age or, older, but say they are like 20, could they still trade their wisdom, or could they trade something for money? Like, could they build a personal brand? Or what's your idea on that?
Well, I think everyone can build a personal brand if you want to build it. I don't know how you build it, but if they want to build, and create this facade, awesome. In the work that I do, it is strictly wisdom only. I have a very strict criteria to work with me anyway. So if you can't prove that you've got at least 10,000 hours in one area of specialization, I actually can't help you. It's very, very difficult for me to work with somebody who doesn't have that level of inventory. I need the breadth and the depth, because what am I working with? Like, what is your brand going to stand for? Like, what problem do you solve? Like, seriously, at 20, what problem are you solving? You could be like my son who's 13 and he's just, obsessed with ethical hacking. Apparently that's ethical. And so I'm like, and those kids are really smart, right? And the other day I was like, did you do something to our IP address? No. Anyway, but the point being is that, he might get to 20 and he might say, oh, I might be a genius, ethical hacker. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the point
yeah.
is that he's starting at a young age.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say here is that for me, wisdom is genuinely a currency. It is the only currency. It is the only way we can solve issues in the world. And here's the thing, most people that are 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, they're already sitting on a gold mine already. They just don't know it. So you think about it. If you've got, 10,000 hours dedicated to, say, being in the finance industry, let's just say you multiply that 10,000 hours by $100 an hour. Just give it an average rate, a conservative rate. There's $1 million. You're already sitting on $1 million of intellectual currency. So we have to see our wisdom like that. We're not seeing it like that. We're caught up in this hamster wheel that, hey, I'm earning 100 grand or 150 grand and I'm doing well. No, actually, you're not doing well, because 150 grand is not a lot of money today. But can we achieve 150?
It's really not. Yeah.
It's not. Can we achieve 150 grand running our own destiny?
Not in Australia, not in countries like the Western world where, the cost of living is so high. I want to make that clear, because, to somebody it is a lot of money, and it's we can really it is a lot of money, but in certain areas of the world where the cost of living is so high, it's like, you don't have the level of personal freedom that you desire.
No,
so
you don't. You're spot on. And so the thing is that for me, it's really understanding that that commercializing, the wisdom, and also it's not about time for money when you've got wisdom, Tanya, because remember I was talking before, when I'm working with clients, we're actually building a system. Now that system can be delivered in multiple different models. It could be one-on-one, it could be a workshop environment, or it could be a hybrid environment. It doesn't matter what the model is, because the system never changes. Okay. That's what a lot of these coaches are trying to do. They're creating all these micro coaching courses that are $99 here, $111 here. They use these numbers, 333, 666, 222. I mean, it's ridiculous. So in my world, we don't do that, because I work with seriously highly intelligent people that are already authorities in their industry. Okay, they just want to.
And I see that's how you differentiate yourself. Like,
that's correct. That's
really
correct.
Only work with a very specific group of people.
Very
is your brand.
Experts. Correct. And therefore I can have that intellectual, elegant, mature conversation with these people. They don't focus on how much is it going to cost to work with you. They just say, I know I want you, and I need this done. So it's a different relationship,
Totally.
and
it's so different. Like
it's so different, Tanya. And I am what you would call seriously premium pricing, like really high.
Yes, I saw that.
I don't need 100 clients. I don't need 100 clients to get me to 7 figures. That's not the model that I'm in. But you don't have to be like me. You can still have my philosophy and wrap that around what you do. But the wisdom is your key to actually creating multiple 6 figures, multiple 7 figures, especially, Tanya, in today's digital economy, especially. I mean, my business is 100% digital. I do 0 face-to-face. It's all over Zoom. So we have to ask ourselves, well, why can she do it? And what am I doing wrong? So do you see what I'm saying? So the model is not about, because I still do one-to-one, but I do a done for you one-to-one. Okay. That's high ticket.
Very different.
And I have a hybrid model where it's a group coaching. It's still very high ticket, but it's a group of those type of people that I only want to serve. So we're having a very mature conversation. It's a tribe that I'm building. And so we should all be following those type of people that are already doing it. What are they doing that is so right? But they're still allowing one-on-one. They're still building a hybrid model. They're still doing workshops. There's a combination of, and it still equals high ticket. So this idea of time for money is because the people that are doing only time for money actually don't have a model and a system in place that gives them that ability to be able to serve one-to-many in a way that is outcome and results driven, and B is transformational, and C, it's actually a tribe of people that is genuinely their target audience. Very important.
Yes. How did you go with mindset? Because like, did you always just come into this like with just a super strong mindset? And actually, before we even talk about mindset, I love that wisdom is a currency, and I love how strong your you know what? And there's okay, my mind's going a million different places. There's a theme that I see a lot, which is about boundaries, and like you got to have stronger boundaries. You got to have stronger boundaries, and I think people don't really understand what boundaries are. And I think that we think, especially in the coaching world, it's like the more boundaries you have, the more kind of there's this kind of wall between them and the client, and that's why they charge so much money, because it's like, well, you know, there's all these layers, or like you can have my $99 offer, but if you want my $10 million offer, then, you know, there's all these walls that you've got to get through. I think there's this mentality that that's what people think that they have to do. But boundaries, and I love how you are just like the most beautiful, elegant, sage example of this, is that like, it's actually just about defining yourself. And like, you don't actually need $10, $99 offers. Like you can just learn how to define yourself. And that's the boundary. That is the boundary. There is no all these walls. Like if your business model is created like that, that's fine. It's just that I think people misunderstand what boundaries actually are. And yeah, I'll be honest, like I'm still defining my boundaries and how I want my business model to look and all of these things. And so, yeah, but I think it's important to know that. And I think you're a really good example of someone who has very clear, defined boundaries, and there's like no wobbles. There's no kind of gray area. You're like, yeah, you said you're like, you turn away people all the time. It's just like, yeah, and you're just so clear about that. And I think that's really, really powerful. And
actually, Tanya, can I just make a point here? You know, my qualification process is so intense. I actually get prospects emailing me saying, holy moly, Mary, your qualification process is on a whole new level. I've never experienced anything like that. But what you've made me realize is that I'm actually not ready. Now, how powerful is that?
Okay,
right?
there you
How
go.
powerful
Yes.
is that? So I'm not going to give you my time if you're not ready. I'm just not going to do that, because I've got 2 children, and my time is that valuable. I need to channel that time into people that I absolutely love and adore and that need me, right? So whereas if I'm going to spend 45 minutes on a sales call, strategy call, discovery call, whatever label you want to give it, you know, I want to know that you're ready, you're ambitious, you're self-led, you're ready to go. I don't have the time to, you know, to nurture you and, you know, and be your mummy. I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. I don't want you to need me. I want you to want to work with me. It's a big difference. That's the boundary. That's the boundary.
Big difference. Yes. Okay. So mindset, like, have you always just had this strong of a mindset?
I think I've always been like this, always from young. I think that I've always even had that confidence to be out in public, you know, just with my singing, performing. I think I've always been like this. There have been stages in my life where, you know, you dip but that had to happen in order for me to go into that place of self-reflection, self-realization. You know, you come through the other end and you're not just stronger, but you've learned so much about yourself. You know, and I think now it's, you know, I've gone to a whole new level. But what happens when you actually start to nurture the mind and the soul and the brain as a collective, as a trio? You know, you just become expansive, and the people that come into your ecosystem are also very expansive people as well. Even I have to pinch myself sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm interviewing these people, like, wow, this is just amazing, you know. And so but it's not. And then what I have found, Tanya, this is the most interesting thing, is those people that are what I would consider as, you know, showstoppers. Even when I get on a conversation like this, and I had this conversation yesterday. I'm just about to interview a major celebrity, and she said to me, you wouldn't believe this, Mary, but I actually have bookmarked your posts on Instagram. And I'm like, what? And she said, I know. She said, do you find that random? I said, yes, especially coming from you.
Can I know who it is?
But no, not yet, because I'm
Okay.
interviewing her, but you'll find out in my magazine. But the thing is, she was just so like gracious. And what I recognized at the end of that interview, and many others as well, is that I'm just having a conversation like you and I are having. We should not have to put anyone on a pedestal, honestly, because here's the thing that I learned. My worst performing posts, say on LinkedIn, have been my greatest return on investment.
Wow.
And that shows me one thing, that people take notice of you. They may not comment, they may not engage, they may not even ever email you, but they are there. And I think we have to recognize that the invisible is more powerful than the visible. Do you know what I'm saying by that?
Yes, it's the energetics.
Yes.
This is the energetic. This is the feminine part, right? It's the unseen. It's the unseen part. And people think the feminine is just this like wishy-washy, you know, and like how much more naked photos can I get to get more likes? And it's like, God. It's just, and there's like, look, people's brands and their essence, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you have to know what the driver is underneath, because you absolutely, when you're building a business, especially on social media, like you have to disassociate the idea of more likes equals more money, because it just doesn't.
No way. Absolutely. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
And I see that with your brand, because like I said, I can see you don't spend a lot of time on social media, and so that's amazing. I think we can mistake also social media for real life, and it's just not. So
I mean, this is the thing, you know, Tanya, this is why I talk about layers in my lead generation strategy. You know, I have a very big following on LinkedIn, so I'll probably spend more time on LinkedIn myself. You know, and then my Facebook group, I've got a social media.
That makes sense too. Like LinkedIn is where your audience is. Like I've seen your Instagram because I'm on Instagram, but that's where my audience mostly is. So
But, you know, that's what I'm saying. You've got to put everything.
You've got to have intention behind.
Correct. Otherwise, what happens is that people will just go, though they're everywhere, but I know where my audience is. You know, I average, you know, I don't know, maybe like January, I've got 10 podcast interviews, for example, you know, so I know where my audience is. So I spend more time where I know my audience is going to hear me, rather than, you know, putting pictures of my holiday, my children, and my body on Instagram. Like, who cares? Who wants to see me on Instagram? You know what I mean?
I know. I constantly think, actually, I'm like, if it wasn't for business, I probably wouldn't have social media. Like, I'm really not that interested in, you know, that. And I think, I'm so much more about bringing just more connection, more purpose, more meaning to like everything that I do. And I just know that that's not going to come from social media. But we do live in a world that is just, like that.
Totally.
So we have to be really self-disciplined is the word, because you can find yourself scrolling and just be like, what the hell am I doing? Like, it's such a waste of time.
I know. I agree.
And actually, just one more thing before I end on like just some traditional questions that I want to put on the podcast that I'm really excited about. When you say wisdom is currency, I'm like 100%. I think what happened for me was that I don't know if you know anything about human design, but I'm a manifesting generator, and I have a lot of passions. But my corporate career, I started off it was advertising and marketing, digital marketing. That was like I first had my internship in advertising, and then my first ever job when I moved to Sydney was in digital marketing. And my whole career up until I quit when I was 28 was in digital marketing, and I was doing Facebook ads, Google ads, you know, some social media stuff, but mostly like performance marketing. And I really thought, and it was very analytical and it was very mathematical, and it was just like lots of spreadsheets and lots of all of that. And I really thought that that was my wisdom. I thought that like, well, okay, I can start selling courses on these things, or start, you know, selling that or packaging that up in some way. Well, I actually started freelancing, and I was just doing freelance work for, small entrepreneurs and small businesses. But I quickly realized, and so I think it's really important to say when we're talking about this, is like, you have to be passionate about it. Because what I found is that even though that was my career, I actually had zero passion for it. Like zero. I was in survival mode. That career was to help me survive through life. It wasn't to help me thrive. And I learned that only by doing it. I wouldn't have known if I didn't take the leap. And what I was going to say, yeah, and I love how you said, you was like, with things that you do with ease and grace, because I'm like, that genius zone is like what most people are seeking, and they don't even know it. Because I'm like, actually, you can take the wisdom, but is it your genius? Because I had a lot of wisdom in those areas, and I'd worked for, really successful like companies, and had a lot of wisdom, but it really wasn't my genius. When I looked at some of the people I worked with who were like mathematical extraordinaires, like data scientists, like people, I'm just like, that is their genius, and will never be that smart or that passionate about what they're doing. And so I had to really, take a look at myself, and then go back into, okay, what is my genius? What is this thing that I'm seeking or searching for? And so actually, while my corporate career gave me a lot of the foundational masculine traits of like routine and planning and strategy and all of this, that people say like, oh, comes so naturally to you. I'm like, yeah, but because I was in that environment for so long. But actually, naturally, I'm more of a flowy person. I'm not really a strategizing, planning person. It doesn't come naturally to me. It's just something that was conditioned into me. And so, I think that's important to differentiate just between the wisdom and the genius, because our genius.
Well, the genius is in your wisdom if you want to commercialize it. So we're talking about two different things. One is that if I find my genius, I should be able to commercialize that.
Yes.
Or my genius can be flowing, the thing that I like to do, but you're never going to make money from it. Okay. So when I look at what my genius is, I can do. My whole program is based on what I can do with ease and grace. But what's my genius zone is that I build systems with ease and grace. I can design algorithms with my eyes closed. Literally, just get on my whiteboard and draw it all out, give it to my web team and say, here, build this. Because that's my genius zone. That's it. That's what people come to me. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Same with you. So all of the stuff that you can do with ease and grace is awesome, because it's a solution. But somewhere in there lies the genius zone.
Yes. Yes, I love that. So what is your message to the world?
Very, very simple. We must acknowledge our wisdom as a currency. I cannot stress this enough. We live in a world that is based on lies and deception. Whichever way you look, there's lack of truth. And because there's lack of truth, that results in big problems. So how are we going to resolve these problems? The only way we can resolve it is through wisdom. I see it with my clients. The projects that some of my clients work on are serial projects that are based on serial problems in major corporations. They don't invite someone with Instagram following of 500,000 people into those boardrooms. They're inviting my clients who have got 20, 30, 40 years wisdom behind them to solve those problems. So wisdom is the truest currency, and better still, it's the only thing that no one can ever take away from you or steal or copy. So we've got to acknowledge and honor it as the next phase of coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, the real deal. They are going to be what I call transformational leaders. They're not even going to be called coaches. In fact, I don't even use that language either anymore. I actually call myself a transformational leader, as my clients are.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. Okay, so some questions that I'll give to every guest is, there's 3 questions. So the first one is, what's one piece of business wisdom that you found out the hard way?
I think that we have to master organic content creation and organic reach before we do any paid advertising. So
Yeah.
I wish that I had actually mastered that first, because I went straight into Facebook ads when I first started, which was really dumb. But now I've mastered organic, and I'm just like the queen of organic, especially on LinkedIn. And so now I look at that and I think, my God, it's so much easier for me to do organic. I build real heart-to-heart connections. I'm believable, I'm trustable, I'm building the right tribe. And now if I want to advertise, at least I know how to write the copy. I know what works and I know who to target.
Yes. Okay. Love it. Definitely something I learned as well. I was taught the opposite. I was taught
Yes.
just run Facebook ads and run this and that. And yeah, I realized that it's absolutely organic first.
Yes.
In general, not to say they can't be anomalies, but in general.
Correct.
What's one piece of life wisdom you want people to remember?
That I think that in our life, we need to understand the idea around the will and the desire to get to our true self, and truly understand that, because the facade is very different to the true self. Very, very different. They're like chalk and cheese.
I know. And so many people think this is the thing, that success is going to get you to your true self, when it's the total opposite.
It will never. It just doesn't happen. It's the opposite.
Success in terms of freedom, fulfillment, fame, fortune, like whatever they think that is.
No.
Yeah.
But the will and the desire to get to your true self, I believe,
in a world that doesn't want you to.
In a world that doesn't want you to. Correct. That couldn't have said any better myself.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we need to teach. I can tell you.
And that's the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing to do.
But having children, I've got a 13 and an 11-year-old. That is what I teach my kids. You've got to, the true self is so important. I've taught my kids how to pray to actually, at a soul level, not even saying, I'll pray to somebody to help you. It's like, pray to your soul, like get there, go there, and so I think that it's very important.
Yeah, like unlock your own personal power.
Yes.
Like it's not outside of you, it's in you.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. And that's the key. Otherwise, we just keep on rinsing and repeating, getting the same result, blaming everyone else, when in actual fact, it's already inside of us. It just needs to be unlocked.
Yes, I love it. So the last one is, if you fill in the blank, you're closer than you think.
If you systemize your knowledge, your wisdom and skills into a results-driven solution, you are closer than you think.
I love it.
Definitely.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to work with you, or if they want to check out your work?
Absolutely. Please feel free to check out my website, maryhendersoncoaching.com. You can book a free call with me, maryhendersoncoaching.com/apply. And also you can email me, mary@maryhendersoncoaching.com. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @maryhendersoncoaching.
Amazing. This was such an amazing conversation. Like so much deep wisdom and really powerful. And it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being my first ever guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute honor. So I really appreciate you. And I know this is going to be extremely successful.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. Yeah, this was just amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.